2015 order. Councilmember Clower, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Ready? Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Roll call, please.
Mayor Velasquez.
Here.
Council members Clower.
Here.
Gomez.
Here.
Friend. Luna.
Present.
City Manager Avera.
Present.
City Attorney Sullivan.
Present.
Chief of Police Westrick.
Is not here.
And City
Okay.
Clerk Graves.
All right, thank you. Verification of agenda posting.
The agenda for the City Council of the City of Hollister special meeting of October 26, 2015 was posted on the bulletin board at City Hall on October 21st, 2015 at 4:45 p.m. per Government Code Section 54956.
Thank you. We'll move forward to item 1, the San Juan Bautista Fire Protection Contract.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I thought maybe Bob might be here, but he may be running a call or something. So I'll do what I can at this point. On last Tuesday night, San Juan Bautista was going to consider executing the contract with the City of Hollister to provide fire protection services. There was a couple of comments. One was I actually spelled Bautista wrong on the contract, and then the other one was, I know, it was bad. Also, on the contract, if you'll recall, it mentions the City of Hollister, usually in parentheses. It's pretty typical in the contracts. It says contractors. It said contractor, and we referred to the city as the city throughout the document. So we've made those changes. One other substantial change that I felt that was very important for the council to know is that through the discussions at the meeting, Chief Martin Del Campo informed me that there was some desire by the City Council of San Juan Bautista to go to a 3-year contract. So we've incorporated that language in there as well with a typical 3% increase on an annual basis. So now it is very similar and consistent with San Benito County, which I'm pretty excited about. And so we will forward those changes over to Roger. Roger was in my office today, so I'll give that to him first thing in the morning, and then they can move on. He also mentioned that there was some discussion about reserves, and I have no idea what they were asking for as far as that is concerned. I haven't seen any language. I would forewarn and or be concerned a little bit that we do something special over in San Juan Bautista as it relates to reserve. The reserve program is essentially a City of Hollister program. It's part of the way we operate our department. So when I get that language, we'll have Bob evaluate it, or I'm sorry, Chief Del Campo, and we'll get back to you folks as soon as possible. That's kind of the latest as of right now. But I am happy that we don't have to start negotiating next year's contract already. So
maybe let me clarify a little bit of the discussion on the reserves. I did have that conversation, and it really goes back to the original contract when we were negotiating that a few years back. And the concern was that to remember that the reserves play a large role in this, and in case the SAFER grant were to go away, that we would not come back and say, well, now it's gone, and now you're going to have to pay so much more dollars because that money is not there. So originally the intent was to work using our reserves to reinforce our departments together so that we can afford to do these things, and understand that the SAFER grant was a blessing to the community, but that we'd be able to function even if that SAFER grant was no longer available by using our reserves. So I think they just want a little more clarity to make sure that if that grant were to leave us, that they wouldn't suddenly have a $1 million bill on their hands. So that's where the clarification needs to happen. I think it's obviously a good step. It's a little hard to make people happy when you spell the name of their city wrong. So I understand some of their frustration, but I'm pleased to hear that they're looking at working with us on a 3-year contract so we can keep doing what we've been doing, and it's keep this moving forward.
I do apologize for the misspelling of San Juan Bautista. The sad or the ironic thing is that it was spelled wrong for like 4 months. Nobody caught it.
We all missed it, so it's shame on us also. Councilmember Friend, you have a question?
Also, on the rumor I heard, with the city of San Juan having an interest in making the second engine in the city San Juan Hollister or San Juan Bautista volunteers, not our reserves. And I think it says in this contract that the chief runs this department. And if he doesn't want to use untrained reserves, that's completely in his control. So I don't think the San Juan really should be making it. In fact, here comes the chief now. Should be making those kind of recommendations when they don't have anything to stand on. And I think we need to make sure that the chief understands, as far as we're concerned, the way this contract is written is how he's going to run it. And we don't need San Juan volunteers that are not at our level to respond on the second engine. That's not what we want to do.
So
if they want to run their volunteers, then we should just back out of it and let them run their fire department.
So I can clarify something very important, because that's why we don't want to talk about rumors. That conversation has been had. We do not want what was happening before. We want trained reserves that went through this program, know exactly what they're doing, and being ready in case of an incident that they're trained and we know they're going to be safe as possible, and they're going to not only protect the residents' properties, but each other. So that's part of this whole program, to make sure we have a higher level of training, which we've accomplished, and it's obviously moving forward with more training. So it's we will not be going back to a situation where it's come in and hang around for a bit. This is professionally trained reserves. So, and you walked in perfect timing.
Yeah,
but let me.
my tardiness.
Councilmember Clark, you had a question?
Go with him first, and I'll listen.
With who?
With Chief, and then if I still have a question.
Chief,
I'll
I
go
was just
after.
mentioning, all I did is fill them in real quickly that I had misspelled Bautista.
Okay.
We changed city to contractor. We also prepared the new contract to go to a 3-year, as we kind of heard. That was maybe a desire of theirs. City Manager Grimsley was in my office today, so I'll get that to him tomorrow.
Great.
They said that they were still chatting a little bit about reserve stuff. I don't know what that actually is going to look like, nor have I seen any language as it relates to that. So,
Okay.
and I know you were there, so.
Yeah. So what some of the questions that they were asking about were, would it be possible to, if one of the engines, engine 14 leaves, the primary engine leaves on a call, and there's another call, can we staff a reserve engine with reserves? My point to that is you need to have a full-time fire captain, engineer, and firefighter on board before we can staff it with reserves. This city nor myself want to take on the liability of staffing an entire rig with reserve firefighters, because of the fact that it can cause a detriment to the productivity of the fire suppression activity or an EMS call. You got to have full-time paid professionals according to 1710, FPA 1710, because what that does, it eliminates any of the liability that may be incurred with something going wrong. Okay. Our reserve status right now is as you go through the application process, you go through interview process, you go through our 12-week academy, you become a firefighter 1 credentialed and an EMT, and you can serve alongside of full-time firefighters as a reservist. That's where you're going to get your career professional education from. I cannot condone, or will I advise the city to condone, a reserve engine fully staffed by just volunteers or reserves, because this is a paid professional environment where you need to have close supervision. PD wouldn't do this. Neither would the sheriff's office, because of the liability that can incur from something happening, something negative happening.
Okay.
So, like I said, that's kind of I think that's kind of going to be our stance. I understand, the cost containment. I think that's why it's important that we have a contract. Depending on what happens with the SAFER grant, we would never go back to San Juan Bautista and say that, we're going to charge you millions of dollars. They're under contract for 3 years. That's sort of their protection. That's sort of their cost containment for us to provide services. So, like I said, when we get their new, when we get any word back from the San Juan Bautista City Council or the city manager, I will let you folks know immediately, and or we'll let them just go ahead and adopt it if it's appropriate. But any changes to the contract that was originally approved by you folks for execution, I will bring back to you if there's substantial changes. This contractor city spelling of Bautista, I'm not too concerned with. So, okay.
Councilmember Clower?
Yeah, that was just kind of the question to see if it was going to come back around. If it's just tweaking words, then no, but if it's actual terms.
Yes. No, if there's terms in relation to reservists specifically, absolutely it would have to come to you, because that's not something that the city council of the city of Hollister agreed to, and that's a policy decision. So, okay. So, thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Councilmember Luna?
I'm just wondering, when you bring back the contract, the compensation and payment to the city of Hollister, I'm sure the amounts will change, right? Because it's a 3-year contract.
Excuse me, Councilman Luna. The first year will stay exactly the same. The second and the third year will go up by 3%. Very just consistent with what we did with the city county of San Benito. Sorry.
Okay, so the dates will not change.
No, the dates will not change. But I will also. I mean, if we agree, or if they agree to a 3-year contract, that is another situation where I will have to bring this back to the city council just so that you bless that part of the contract.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll move forward to item 2.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. There are some public comments.
I'm sorry.
The first public comment is Keith Snow. Yeah.
I don't know if it was that.
It's Mr. Snow has written, when you do the contract, try not to pay overtime pay because it hurts our city economy and reduces spending.
And then another thing, was here right there on reserves and all that in San Bautista. We do make a captain and all the other black police for firefighters. On the contract, make sure make it hard for San Bautista. Thank you.
There are no more public comments, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. We'll move to item 2, Veterans Memorial Building.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As you know, I've been mentioning this now for a few months as well. The City of Hollister has what we'll call an operating agreement with the VFW and the American Legion for sort of the maintenance and operations of the Vets Memorial Hall on San Benito Street. We were in this agreement probably for about a year and a half or so. Technically, it expired on June 30th. We've been kind of running on a sort of month-to-month basis from that point forward until I could bring it to you. The way that this agreement works is essentially they're responsible for the maintenance of the building. They handle all the reservations, the setup, the teardown, the cleanup. In return, they retain the rents that are received for the buildings, the rents that are collected from the rental of the building. In addition, the city of Hollister pays about $20,000 a quarter, and then we also assist in the repairs and maintenance for items that are greater than $5,000 in an occurrence. So if an air conditioner or elevators or those types of things go out and there's a substantial repair, that belongs to the city of Hollister as well. We had a little bit of trouble at the very beginning, but over the last year or so, it's worked out very, very nicely. We've had a good relationship with the VFW and the Legion. So part of it is, from here moving forward, is do we want to, does the council want to consider making any changes or adjustments to the current contract? If so, what those changes may be. We'll have those discussions with the VFW and American Legion moving forward to agree. And then the other thing, I think, from our perspective, and I don't know if Brett and Brad want to weigh in on this, one of the things that has sort of been a little bit of a concern for me is sort of this term operating agreement. One of the things that I may recommend, if it's appropriate or not, we didn't really get a chance to talk about it too much before tonight's meeting, but I would almost rather have it be a lease, in the sense that if we lease the property to the VFW and American Legion, then the city council has a greater separation, or the city has a greater separation from the activities that occur at the building. It would be very similar to, say, when we lease a building for business out at the airport. They collect money, they conduct their business and whatnot. I think there's some concern on our end when the veterans groups are charging a rate and a fee that is approved by the city council, yet it goes into an account. There's not a lot of accountability. I don't want to say that came out wrong. I don't mean that. What I mean is that we don't audit them on a regular basis and making sure. Now, Mr. Love has provided us with some information today or Friday on sort of where they have been, kind of the dollar amounts in their accounts as they move forward. Like I said, we're completely okay with the way they're operating. I think one of the things from my perspective is just the terminology that we use moving forward. A lease agreement really can be no different from an operational perspective as an operating agreement. I just like the term lease better. It shows like there's a greater separation between the city and the two organizations. So again, this is really just sort of, if there's anybody that has major concerns on the council about how it's operating, please let me know and we'll try to address those. Otherwise, we'll just kind of move forward status quo for a whatever period of time you feel is appropriate. I would say that, again, I don't think I would like to do anything less than 2 years. 3 years to 5 years is probably appropriate. So that's kind of where I don't like going through these negotiations every year or two. It's not fun.
Okay. Are there any comments or questions from the council?
No, I'd like to hear from the...
Well, Councilmember Clower?
How many of the large repairs happen per year? Is it 0? Is it 2? Is it 5? Just trying to get an idea of how much it actually costs the city to maintain the building.
Did you want to answer?
I think I can answer it. Joe and Mike could probably do it better than I. There were some in the initial year because when we first took over, the building was in pretty bad repair. Mm-hmm. Now that it's up to what we consider our standards, those will be less in the next few years. There are some major things coming up, but those are going to have to be contracted to do, and they'll come through the city to do those, like the repair of the floor, and we are looking at a solar system on the building to cut down any expense for the electricity. But the reason there were some, and I don't think there was more than half a dozen of them that were over the $5,000, and the reason was because it was in such disrepair. But now it's working fine, and all those repairs have been made, so we don't anticipate any more of those. You can't say never, but there shouldn't be any long-term. And just so the record knows, I am involved with the VFW and the American Legion on helping to operate the building. And I have checked with the Fair Political Practice Board, and as long as I do not get paid by those people, then it's fine that I be on the council and represent them. Just wanted to make sure everybody understands I'm not violating any rules.
I think in addition to Councilman Clower with the repairs and or maintenance, some of the services we've elected to pay for as well. There was exterminator service that we got involved with that was pretty substantial. So it's not just about repairs. It could be other services as well that we do. And that was a recent one, right? That was just about a month ago. So,
kind of leads to my next question. Do we have a maintenance schedule or repair history or some kind of outline that this is going to happen at this point and this is going to happen at the next point?
Yes, we do.
Because I'm guessing that the building doesn't generate any revenue for the city, and we're shelling out 80 grand plus whatever repairs are. So just trying to wrap my mind around this big, beautiful building, how much it costs to actually keep every year.
For your benefit, yeah, I'm sorry, Ray.
I think Mike and Joe probably could answer that better if they come up, but the $80,000 a year that it costs the city to maintain that building, and then what is made only on the weekends by rentals, 60% of the use of that building is used for free. The city, the county, the nonprofits that want to use the building, the 4-H, the University of Davis stuff. So we don't get paid for those, and they do cost money to do. So
well, I understand
it's
that.
not like the building's making any money.
I don't have a problem with the VFW or American Legion sustaining their services. It's just I want to know how much it actually costs to maintain the building, just like we would know how much it costs to maintain City Hall or any other building.
So, and let me go back even a few years prior to that, just so that Council Member Luna and Clower kind of have the history. So, several years ago, it used to kind of belong under San Benito County. When the building was in pretty bad disrepair, the county realized that they didn't have the money available to sort of rehab it and retrofit the building. They turned it over to the City of Hollister. The City of Hollister's redevelopment agency did a substantial rehabilitation program, about $3.6 million, I think, at the end of the day, redoing Veterans Memorial Hall. At the same time, we then hired or had an employee that was on our salary that was taking care of the building. And what was happening is that there was always a subsidy every year based on this gentleman's, wages and salaries, the salary and benefits versus how much was being generated at the building, and there was always a subsidy involved at the end of the year. When a few years ago, when the veterans groups came to the City of Hollister and said, we would like to be able to operate the building, we believe that we can do a better job, we care a little bit more about the building, we have staff that would volunteer and help do those types of things, that's when we got involved with having this operating agreement. As part of that operating agreement, we already were subsidizing that building pretty heavily, so that's why we then took the $80,000 or the $20,000 a quarter and continued that to these folks. So it wasn't really necessarily a situation where we were spending more money or less money. It was kind of status quo, but we had the sort of the human resources factor of having all the folks as part of the vets groups help maintain that building and not just one particular person. So that's kind of the story behind it.
Councilmember Luna?
Yes, to our city manager, I think I remember the cost of the Veterans Memorial Building while I worked in finance. So I am just very curious to see the expenditures, the cost involved of operating the building. You do have that information available to us?
Yep.
Yeah, for us, like I say, now it really everything that flows and funnels to there. So all PG&E, all water, all sewer, all the regular day-to-day phone, all that stuff actually goes through the veterans group. We do have copies of their records and their bank statements about where things are coming in and the rents that are generated. So we do have that. Actually, Brett has that.
And actually, I would just like to see the spreadsheet of the expenditures and
sure, we can get
whatever.
that for you. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think it's worked out well. The vets have obviously turned it around and are maintaining it like their home as it is. So that's been a good result. When we discussed a few years ago, we were talking about the idea that slowly we would either reduce the amount or keep it where it's at. So the vets are covering more of the share of it over time. But I think it's important to give them the opportunity to first get a good footing, which they've been doing over the last year and a half, 2 years, give them a chance to really have that thing down to where they're actually making some more money from the events that they're doing and eventually make their own way through other sources. But I don't think we want to be looking at reducing the amount right now. We need to give them a chance to really succeed, and obviously they have done that over the last couple of years. I think your idea of 5 years is a good idea. We need to give them time to get started, and I don't know how the other council members feel, but they need time to keep working on what they've been doing there at the building.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I apologize for coming in late. Highway 25 traffic. I always got to put my plug in. So, and I know that obviously the new council members have some questions here, and I'm all for entertaining, the ideas that we shared in the past. But first of all, I want to thank our veterans organizations for the work that they've done in their building and the things that they continue to bring to the community. One way or the other, whether we're saying it's the veterans group or the city or whoever, ultimately at the end of the day, there's a subsidy there that we're dealing with, whether it's in their hands or whether it's in somebody else's hands. If it's in somebody else's hands, it could potentially be worse, could be better. I don't know, but right now it seems to be working with what we have, and I do believe we need to, find a way to wean whatever organization away from the city subsidy, but obviously there's no better organization than our local veterans to be able to get that done. So I'm fine with continuing with what we have going on, as long as we try to set some type of business plan, some type of plan laid out over the next 5 years, as the mayor suggested, that we're able to sort of pull away at least with what we consider to be this operational subsidy. I think no matter what, obviously it's our building, we're going to be involved in it. We need to take care of the maintenance. We need to take care of the building. So we're always going to continue with at least the maintenance portion of it, but at least the operational portion of it, I think we need to continue to evaluate a way to pull away from that in the next 5 years. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have any speaker cards?
First speaker is Keith Snow, who has written a question on his speaker card. It says, even though you guys gave the memorial building to the veterans, make sure on the contract that the city is not obligated to give $12,000 a year for the bike relay, just so they can sell beer and steak sandwiches. I have nothing against veterans. All my family were veterans, but our city needs to work on reducing their spending because our taxpayers are already paying their property taxes.
And then another thing too, make sure you guys put that on the contract. Cause Ray friend Robert before the ex-city councilman with Pauline right there, and Victor and all guys are there. So points right on the contract. Put down, put obligate as a taxpayer. You guys give them every year $20,000 for the background. So we need to wean that off and love and all them. And I know they handled the 1.2 skill works right from the veteran bills. From with the veterans, my family died, but my dad, my grandpa, professor, died for a country. My friends died for a country. But God's sake, please, as a dad, protect and secure taxpayers by having them not give them $12,000, because that's the only problem every year when guys get the contract right in their bill and in the mayor and law to put that in there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bless.
Can we answer the question?
Let's go through those speakers. Are you talking about a comment is there something made? Go ahead.
Well, there was a comment made on his question that the veterans received money during the rally and stuff just to sell beer and sandwiches. The veterans have never made any money on that building as far as making sandwiches and stuff. The promoter rented that building all 4 days. The veterans did not pay
Okay.
Did not use that building.
All right, thank you very much. Next speaker card. Thank
The
you,
next
Mr.
speaker
Son.
is Joe Love.
Good evening, Council. It's nice to be here. It's been a good 2 years. As Billy said, we did have some bumps in the road, but when you're flying, you're always going to get bumps in the road. We was flying pretty high there in the beginning, and we had a few issues, but we got those all worked away. The one thing that's really nice, and I feel really good, and I know Mike feels really good, it's my counterpart, Mike Polito, is that we've done it, and we're still alive. One thing is that we put a lot of heart into this. Myself, I'm a retired general contractor and also a plumbing contractor. I've been a workaholic my whole life. So I retire, and what do? I take on a free job, and I've been very fortunate enough that God's given me enough finances that I don't need another job to be paid. So I can donate that for veterans of the community. And I believe Mike is the same way. We do this stuff for our local veterans. But what's really nice about it is when we go home at night and we look at that building is a pinnacle for this city. And in the last 2 years, this building has really picked up on rentals, the ones that we don't get paid. And what that is that it's a nice building, and now that we have video, we want to start looking at the videos, and if people are coming in where there's only like 1 or 2 people in a meeting, it's a waste of assets for us to let 1 or 2 people come in and use that room for 3 hours and have the PG&E bill going around and around, especially at 27 cents a kilowatt hour, plus air conditioning, plus water, plus toilets, plus everything. So it's we're always looking at ways to cut our cost. We're working on the plumbing. We're going to put water-saving urinals in. We're going to put the waterless ones in. As Ray has said to Councilman Friend, that we're looking at redoing the floors. I've got one more bid to come in, and then I'm going to forward them over to the city. We've got the solar stuff coming in. We've got one contractor coming to meet us tomorrow with a proposal, and we got 2 others coming in. So we worked hard. And one thing that you did forget is you forgot about the girls over there at the Parks and Recreation that did the thing, and there's a big expense there. So we cover a lot more than just the one gentleman's time that he had there.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That is true.
Yep.
And the third speaker is Marty Rathman.
Put on my Dutch hat to make the speech.
Hi, Marty Richmond from Hollister. I'd like to bring up one legal issue before I talk about the building. If you change the relationship and make it a lease, you have to be careful about a proprietary interest concerning taxes. I suggest that you get a lawyer to look at it, or that the vets get a lawyer to look at it, because you don't want to wind up so far away from that they wind up with the tax bill for a building that actually really belongs to the city. So you have to be careful about that. That's like leasing out at the airport. Many of those people pay proprietary tax interest, okay? So that's important. Now, about the building. I think you know the rule I go by. We're never afraid of the facts, no matter where they lead, because the facts are the facts. So I do think you should collect all the information about the cost and the benefit of the building. Now, the cost in dollars is a lot easier, because you can say, oh, here's how much we gave them every quarter, and here's how much more we kicked in for major repairs. Part of the benefit is how much minor repairs they did. Got to get a list of that. How many man hours they put in. Got to get a list of that, because that's worth a lot of money. You'd have to have somebody else do it. How many community places go there and get free office space? how many public service, probably, I'm not sure if the Veterans Services officers get free space over there. I think they are. How many government interests are getting free space? And then you have to decide, are we going to charge people for, we're going to charge the county for putting a veteran service officer over there? We're going to give them free space. One way or the other, it's a cost somebody has to pay for, or it's a cost that they actually contribute by running the building. I will say this, and I haven't been working on the building at all myself, and I don't go in there and rah-rah the building. I will say this, that typically government does not do a good job of maintaining their buildings or their infrastructure. It's just a lack of money, usually, or lack of time. And that building, before the vets took it over, was an ungodly mess. There's no other word for it. So I go in there now. I was in on 2 meetings in the last couple of weeks, and I went upstairs, but I always poke my head in to see what it looks like. And it's absolutely pristine, okay? It looks great. And that means somebody's putting in an enormous amount of hours scrubbing the floors and cleaning the overheads and working in the kitchen and whatever they're doing. And all that has to be factored in, because we had an employee there, but we didn't have enough money in the old way to put in the number of employees we needed to keep that building up. So that building was on a steady decline. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
There are no more speakers, Mr. Mayor.
No more speakers. Any other comments from council?
Can I summarize then real quickly?
Please.
Okay, so what I'd like to do then is we'll start putting together, and I'll just call it a new contract. We'll figure out if it's going to be a lease or an operating arrangement. Just real quick, the veterans groups are a 501c3, so we'll take a closer look at it, but we don't think a possessory interest tax or something like that would play a role in that. So, but we'll make sure that we don't put them in a bad spot. You're welcome. So we'll look for a longer term deal. At least initially, there's not a desire by the city council to reduce the amount of the quote unquote the assistance or the subsidy. Maybe if we do a 5-year deal, we can look at years like 4 and 5, reducing a little bit depending on maybe what the revenue generation is. I would also like to know whether or not right now I believe that the council should be ratifying sort of the fees that are charged or the rental or lease rates that go on at the building. If we end up going a different route, we'll just let the veterans group manage that and charge market rate as appropriate and not come to you folks. Is that okay as well?
Absolutely. I
Okay.
think this is where,
as long as they're running it like
we're
a
giving them the
right.
time to
Right.
develop their business plan.
Okay, so perfect. Then I think it also makes it a little bit easier for them that pill to swallow if we start to reduce it in the 4th and 5th year or something along those lines. So
Right.
okay, perfect. I have my marching orders, and if you ever we'll get it done as quickly as we can. Then thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Move to item 3 now, the funding of some local nonprofits.
Item 3. Oh, thank you. I apologize. This item was discussed a little bit, I think, at a previous study session. I wanted to bring it back for the full council's sort of direction to staff. Staff is requesting that we work with the subcommittee of the City Council to release what I'll just call a notice of funding availability. That's kind of a coined term throughout the state of California for monies that may be available for local nonprofit agencies to apply and or make a proposal and or a presentation to. Currently, staff is recommending that $75,000 be set aside for these activities. However, I want to be very clear and say that a portion of that should go to the agency of the
Area Agency of...
Yeah, there you go. AAA. Okay. And I believe that is just shy of $10,000 to meet that 25% recommendation that they're having between us and the county of San Benito.
Santa Clara. San Benito and Santa
Yes,
Cruz.
us in San Benito County would make up 25%. Santa Cruz is the other 75% of the organization. So, with that said, I know I see a lot of folks from the nonprofits. If I've also provided you kind of a history of the local nonprofits and the funding that they had received over the last several years. There's an advocacy group, there's CASA, the Community Food Bank of San Benito County, Emmaus House, Hollister Youth Alliance, Senior Citizens Legal Service, the Senior Council, Suicide Prevention, and I think that may be it. So if you have any questions for me, we used to try to do this as part of our normal budget. During the lean years, we've kind of tabled it. As you can see in the spreadsheet, the last couple of years, the city hasn't participated in these programs. But we feel like we're about in a spot now where we believe that we can do some of these things and help those local nonprofits that need it.
So just for clarity, make sure that we don't run into the situation again, for the Area Agency on Aging, if we could put that into the budget so that's an automatic, because that federal dollars are coming in because of our money that we're putting in. So we don't never want to be back in that situation.
Thank you, Mr.
in
Mayor.
future years.
And yeah, part of it, that will be part of our normal annual operating budget. We will put it in either, we haven't determined whether it would be in quote unquote the city manager's department or the city council's department, but it'll be accounted for completely separate from this moving forward.
It's too important.
Now, which one of those groups is what's listed on our history? Is it this senior council?
Oh, no. It's actually, I think before it was actually just paid for, right?
It is seniors council.
Oh, it is seniors council? Okay.
Right. So we're going to move that out.
Okay. So the senior council won't be on this recommended list. It's already.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Because it went from 11,000 to 7,000. And then it'll go back to 9,500, I think it was.
Well, but what I'd like to point out, this is, we have dollars from the federal government coming in. I think what should have happened here, this should have been a budget item. Then our local group, Holiness, should be on this list of nonprofits because they barely scrape by as it is, and they provide one of the most important services here in our own community. So, and I know we help them with the building and other areas, but
they would take the place of the senior council.
Right.
And it would be $9,500, yeah.
Right. So,
but that, okay. So just to clarify, so the senior council that we're calling that on our list is really being taken care of by our, in the future, our line item that's going to be on our budget.
That would be correct.
But Holiness is going to take that spot on the list
If that's the
as a separate entity. So it gets separate money from this. From the agent council.
That's a policy decision by the council.
Well, then that's what I'm telling the council, that I would see that
that would
two
make
separate items.
That's exactly right. So we don't want to, we as we're going through the budget crisis, we cut out all of the nonprofits, and unfortunately the seniors group was in this, and dollars were coming in from the federal government, so we were really causing ourselves problems. That should be an item in the budget, so we're never in that situation again. But we want to make sure we're giving the help to our local group here for seniors that they need. They provide a huge service. They depend on some of the other dollars, but they scrape by as it is, and we need to make sure we're giving them the resources because they've proven themselves for many, many years, and really it's a pretty impressive operation. Councilmember Luna?
Yes, I just have a question and clarification that the amount that you are recommending here is $75,000. Now you're adding an additional.
No, the $75,000 total, we would take $9,500 off of that. So what would be available, what I'm recommending at least at this point, would be $65,500.
Was that the amount that was brought to us before?
There was, they ranged between, I think, 50 and 60.
I think for clarification, I think Councilmember Luna is talking about when we were going through the budget, we were talking about a number of $100,000.
$100,000.
That's probably what.
Again, and it's a policy decision. If the council decides that they want to do $100,000 for local nonprofits, that's absolutely, we can do that as well.
I see the real need of the community, with the nonprofit world here, because after all, I mean, we have a group of volunteers. If we want to encourage participation in the city, and with our youth and senior citizens and, across the board, then I think we need to deal with a little bit more of what is being recommended.
Okay.
That's my comment.
I like to, part of the past we were giving out dollars, which obviously our nonprofits needed, but I think it's important for us to start really structuring some sort of goal with each group to make sure we're achieving those goals. I think sometimes we can become complacent with dollars without realizing maybe we're not succeeding in what we were originally striving for. So I think if the group looks at how we can work with the nonprofits to figure out what the goals are and making sure they're achieving their goals, it's going to be very important in the future. We know that our seniors need the help. We know that our young people need the help. But what does that mean with our young people? Are we trying to help them move forward in school, getting better grades, moving on to college? Are we trying to make sure they're having the basic services? If we can kind of strive for a goal with each agency so we make sure we're all meeting those goals, that'd be very important, because every dollar we invest in the community, if it's coming back and they're achieving those goals, we're actually saving quite a bit of money. And that should be what we're trying to do here, helping the nonprofits strive to meet what their intentions were in the first place.
And Mr. Mayor, I just want to add that, accountability falls into play here. Anytime that the city will have the funding available for our community, we need to hear back. We need to see the results, of the sponsorship, donation, whatever you want to call it. But after all, we need to see how that money is being spent.
That's right. I'd like to see results. Councilmember Friend?
Well, I guess I just want to, if I'm hearing, and I don't have a problem with $100,000, if I'm hearing that we're going to do that, I guess what I was looking for is, how does the council want to do that? Do you want to have a subcommittee vet out the ones that are going to achieve goals and have goals to achieve, or are you going to have each individual unit, nonprofit come before the whole council and make their argument, or are you going to have a subcommittee do that and make recommendations to the council? Or how do you want, I guess, what's the pleasure of the council?
Right.
How do you want to?
I believe in the previous meeting we talked about having the subcommittee of yourself and Councilmember Clower working on bringing forward the nonprofit groups that we feel are in most need. They're achieving some.
And that was, Councilman Clower and I were talking that we would have a meeting, a notice of funds availability, and have a meeting to talk about that and to set those goals and to make the recommendations to the council on how that money should be distributed.
Yeah, my recommendation would be, say, tomorrow I can get with you, the subcommittee. We could start to put together a quick request for proposals from the local nonprofits. We'll send those out immediately. Say, give them 2 to 3 weeks to respond. Then the subcommittee can meet with those groups or organizations. Then come up with a recommendation to the entire council, maybe by the first meeting in December. That way, that a resolution can be adopted and ratified, authorizing staff to go ahead and cut those checks to those local nonprofits, if that's appropriate.
I don't know about Councilmember Clower, but I think that's a doable schedule. I
Mm-hmm.
think we could do that. I already have talked to a few, and I know what the needs are, and I think we could do like you're saying and ask them to set goals that are reportable, and we'll ask them to do a quarterly report, and they can tell us what they're doing with the money we give them. And like you're saying about, we can hold them to a standard that next year it might be a different group because that standard is not met. So.
Right. We want to make sure we're seeing results.
Yeah.
So when we see results, we know we're saving money in the communities.
Well, I think most of them we already know what those results are.
Right.
We've been hurting them by not
That's right.
helping them before. So.
Okay. Any other questions from council? Do we have Councilmember Gomez?
Yeah, just really quick. Is there Is there a certain criteria that the subcommittee is going to follow?
I think they can work on that with the city manager and bring it back to the council.
It's not like we're the only municipality that does this.
No,
I'm sure
and that
there's-
would be another step if the council doesn't feel comfortable with the subcommittee's recommendations. I suppose we can bring the program back as a whole. We can develop the RFP and the criteria. We can get the council to agree to that criteria, and then go out and get the proposals from the local nonprofits. Or if we want to keep it general, again, that's a kind of a policy decision.
Well, I figured that the subcommittee could still use some criteria that they could follow. It doesn't have to come to us. I don't.
Okay.
If they both want to tackle this issue, so be it. I'm all for it.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we're thoroughly evaluating some sort of criteria before they make a recommendation.
Right, and I think the other thing that I've been hearing is that I don't want to. I think that my recommendation would be to the council and the subcommittees that just because these 8 or 9 local nonprofits have received funding in the past, it's not going to just go to those 8 or 9. It could go to 10 or it could go to 6. So I just want to make sure that we're clear on that, and whatever the subcommittee deems appropriate is what will happen.
So with that said, I'm not part of the subcommittee, but I do want the subcommittee members to understand the importance of the youth in the community and to really consider the funding for the Hollister Youth Alliance. Thanks.
Well, I think you're going to see it. I think at the next meeting, you're going to see just how important I think the youth are. So.
That's awesome.
And I don't think I don't think either Carson or Rye are going to have. It's not a task that. It's not a burden. I don't mind doing this. I feel embarrassed that we haven't done it in the last couple of years, so I'm looking forward to being able to do that. It feels kind of good to be talking about a subcommittee to spend money instead of, no, we don't have any.
Well, I would go back and say to you that because we did what we did, we're able to have that conversation now.
understand that.
So I think we made the right moves, and all the other groups out there have done the same thing. If we do have a criteria and we're working towards the same goals, our youth is our future, and if we can make sure they're being educated or being given the programs or tools they need to succeed, they're going to come back and repay that. So it's very worthwhile to invest.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to say on my behalf, I'm in agreement with the subcommittee, and I'm sure the subcommittee will probably be hearing from all of us at one time or another.
Absolutely.
I would hope so.
You will.
Councilmember Flower?
Yeah, I guess my only point is I'm hopeful that it won't be just these 8, and that it'll make it really hard on us, and we have 20 or 25 to choose from, because there's like 170 nonprofits in the county. So don't make it easy on the 2 of us. I'd like to struggle through it, because then the next year we know that there's more people out there who can really use it. Because you hear about the need all the time, and that was one of the reasons I was pushing for the notice and the request for proposals, because it's easy to pick up the phone and call the 5 people who are there all the time, and you keep giving the cash year after year. So if there's somebody new and you're thinking, hey, maybe we should go ahead and try this, come out and try it, and we'll see how it goes.
Thanks.
Okay. Do we have any speaker cards?
Mr. Mayor, the first speaker is Keith Snow. Mr. Snow has written on his comment card, our city should regulate the nonprofits. A lot of them are scams. We should hire someone to regulate and keep an eye out for the ones scamming our city. We should only help our local nonprofits.
The one turns down for the nonprofits. But what's been happening, and you guys were in the county, down the Little League nonprofit scam money, and a person got arrested. Some dog brands were a nonprofit scammed again, another scam, right? And we need to regulate it, and how you guys said too, we're raising the towns and want to raise money for wherever, create that thing for towns, right? You mentioned that a while back, last year. So point is right. How can you guys regularly when I was at Starbucks last year, and I told Westrick, right, and our bills $100,000, without person straight up, I scammed $100,000, and I get away with it, and I'm rich, and then there's no regulation, so we need to regulate a lot, oversee things. So we're a community guy, and Mike Shams or code enforcement thing. The last meeting I'm watching TV because I missed it, right? And we're a person from a business, not-for-profit business, when the lawyers there and all that, the thing I didn't watch, I tape it. I got VDR. So points right. So how can be honest local government and want things are easy? No, of course, business is easy. Non-profits easy. We need business. We non-profits. Batting that thing for the city, county, and the sheriffs, whoever, to the me and then Mike, try and get me with them, right? Because they don't care. Point, we need care. We don't overlook everything. We didn't regulate things. We order. We handle the city. And that one thing when Bill said $10, first thing that came out of his mouth, that's the first thing that person at Starbucks said. She said, and they're 12 hours trying to get the license number with banned 2014 vehicle, right? With the guy, right? So point right. That's the first thing she said she got with, and she's rich. We don't regulate nothing. I'd be snitching nothing, but enough 5 minutes in the non-profit world. I want to do I do things by the law and by the book. I've never taken nothing for no one. They're like what happened to me and my thing in the city here. Lie, people make things up. No, I heard it. So thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you very much.
The second speaker, Mr. Mayor, is Clay Kempf.
Clay Kemp, Executive Director of the Seniors Council, operating the Area Agency on Aging. Thanks for considering this. I really appreciate it. And also, I agree with everything the city manager is describing about the process. I think you're laying it out pretty clearly. You probably have some questions about the whole Seniors Council, AAA, why we're in a separate category. So I'll try to cover that in the 2 minutes that are left. But feel free to ask questions if you ask some afterwards. But basically, an area agency on aging is typically run by local government. And that local entity receives federal and state funds and uses those funds for certain mandated services. The great thing about the AAA model is the agency that makes the decision of what senior services will be funded, and this is through Older Americans Act, is always local or in a local region. So you don't have the feds in D.C. telling you in Hollister how to feed seniors in this community. It really requires some sort of knowledge of the local community. So that's the role that we do, and we're unique in that there's 33 AAAs in California, and only 4 or 5 of them are nonprofits. The reason it's being done here by a nonprofit rather than one of our local governments is 20, 30 years ago, local government realized a nonprofit could do this cheaper and more efficiently than a city could, or a joint powers agreement between multiple cities and multiple counties. So that's where we come into the role. What happened is background, you see the information in your packet, but our advisory council, which is mandated by law, that an advisory council oversees AAA activities and looks at how things are functioning, they noticed in their due diligence that 84% of the seniors in the area we serve live in Santa Cruz County, only 16% are in San Benito County, but we have a standard practice of providing 25% of our funds rather than 16% to San Benito County and San Benito County residents. And of course that includes the city of Hollister. The reason for that is we recognize there's greater challenges in rural communities. It's harder to serve people because they live farther apart, and there's local fewer resources. So eventually, when the city money came out of the equation, decision, the advisory council representatives from Santa Cruz County said, wait a minute, how can I be faithful to my electeds if I'm recommending additional funds come to San Benito County residents and City of Hollister residents if they're not providing their fair share? So this switch back to $9,500 balances that back out, where the local match will be 25% in this county as a whole and 75% in Santa Cruz County, and I think the representatives from other cities are happy with that. So that's the short story of what happened. If you've got questions about this, feel free to ask them. Just one last thing. One thing that can happen if we're taken out of the regular application process, since we're very familiar with funding other agencies, we could assist the city in their process for figuring out what a good RFP looks like with other nonprofits. So we're available for that if you need us.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Thank you.
Clay Kempf.
Clay, yes.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I was looking right at... Gary Edwards, I was looking right at your name and I was saying Clay Kempf.
We look a lot. Gary's the eloquent one, I'm the good looking.
Thank you. I'm Gary Edwards, Executive Director of Advocacy, Inc. We administer the Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program for Santa Cruz and San Benito counties. Our program, the Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program, operates in skilled nursing facilities and residential care facilities for the elderly. And the program is mandated under federal and under state law. And our services are unduplicated in the community. There's nobody else that does the work that we do. 90% of the skilled nursing and residential care beds are in Santa Cruz County. 10% of the beds are in San Benito County. And it works out that approximately 10% of the complaints and the issues that we deal with come from facilities in Hollister and in San Benito County. We do have, in order to cover Hollister and San Benito County, rather than sending an ombudsman from Santa Cruz County to San Benito County for individual complaints, we actually have an ombudsman that is here lives in Hollister, and she visits the facilities in Hollister and out in the county. In order to have that individual here, even though it's 10% of the beds, 10% of the complaints, it covers, or at least the cost to us is about 17% of our ombudsman staff budget. So the funding from San Benito County and until recently from the City of Hollister has helped us to maintain that San Benito County, the Hollister Ombudsman. So we would appreciate your consideration for, and look forward to the funding process, the RFP when that comes out, and appreciate your consideration for the work that we do. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And Cesar Flores.
Good evening. I'm Cesar Flores, former resident of Hollister. I now live in San Juan Bautista, but I lived here 28 years.
And I like you, Cesar.
Pardon?
I said, and I really like you.
Thank you. Thank you. I like you too, Victor. Mutual Admiration Society here. And that's my seconds going away. Anyway, my question was, how do we get on this list? And basically, I'm interested because I'm the president of the local LULAC chapter, and we have a young readers program, which we no longer get funded for. And this program has, we've run it for the last 13 years. We've reached over 325 kids. We got 240 high school tutors, because we get the high school tutors to come also and help. But in doing this and reaching out for these youth, we're also reaching out to the parents. Some of the parents are becoming readers. And this is one of the major problems that we have with these. And this is reaching first through third grade. And I think if we nip them in the bud, we got a head start. So that's what I want to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We do want to get on that list, the readers program. Thank you.
Cesar, you forgot to mention the arts. Just giving you a couple more seconds.
Well, I wasn't prepared for that, but But the 3 minutes. Yes, I'm also president of the San Benito County Arts Council. We started about 7 years ago with a $10,000 donation from the people that are going to build a city out there, Rancho San Benito, whatever. But we have managed to increase that tenfold in the 7 years that we've been alive as a 501c3. So if you do have some money, the arts are always available. We have workshops there on Fridays. We reach a lot of the children, and it's just amazing. And thank you.
Thank you very much.
Erica Elliott.
Hello, good evening. My name is Erica Elliott. I'm a program manager for Community Solutions. And you guys already answered my question after I already put the paper in. But I just wanted to thank you guys for taking the time to really recognize all the nonprofit work that's done in this county, and all of the great work that's done by all of our partners. It's always amazing. It's such a small town, and the viability of all these organizations still work in the last couple of years. It's been amazing to see their resilience. So thank you for really making the effort this year and increasing the funding. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Pauline Valdivia. Who?
No. I need to walk. Okay. I'll just put this one here. Hi, everybody. I'm back.
Welcome.
I'm back, but I'm on this side of the fence this time. Anyway, on a serious note, I just want to thank everybody, all of you, for the support that you have given that you brought this back, because it's so important for the Seniors Council, the AAA, and also for the nonprofits in the community. I know that the need is really great, and usually there's not enough money to meet all the need, because there's a lot of nonprofits in the county. But anyway, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I think it's great. You're showing a commitment and continuing support, especially for the elderly in San Benito County and Hollister, in the city of Hollister. So at this time, I just want to thank you. And also, I will say a little bit more when I submit my RFP. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Marty Richmond.
I mean, to borrow your cane. Going slow, really slow today. So excuse me while
I know she took your veteran's hat off, though.
Yeah, problems today. I'm looking for sympathy. Marty Richmond from Hollister. I would like to, I think the idea of doing a NOFA is a good idea. But I'd like to talk about, not this time around, I'd like to talk about a year from now. I think this would be a perfect, the idea of this subcommittee would be absolutely just a perfect idea for the intergovernmental work, because basically these needs all overlap. A lot of times they're the same organizations. We've come to some agreements, as the Alliance for the Aging folks mentioned, and some places we don't have agreements. The criteria you're going to come up with, I cannot imagine that the criteria in the county would be any different. We all kind of have a concept of what the criteria is about what you do with the money, how many visits you do, how many people you help. A lot of the information you're going to gather is going to be available from HHS at the county, because they have a lot of information on the needs in the county and in the city both. And in this area, it's hard to do it. And you want to make sure you all work together to get the maximum match from the federal and state government. We all know that. And you want to get the maximum bang for your buck. And typically, rural has some kind of problems and urban has other kind of problems. We all know that. But I think if you look, I think you ought to plan a year from now to basically have this as a combined effort between the county and the city. I think it'll allow you to do more with your money. I think it will eliminate perhaps some overlap, and every buck counts, and maybe it will in the end actually encourage the people to put more money into the system. I don't criticize anybody for whatever they want to support. If you want to support anything, all of us have our favorite thing to support. Some of it's local, some of it's national. If you do anything that's great. So I don't come up here pitching for any particular subject. I just think it's important to not have it fragmented, to have it congealed into one rational system of deciding what is the best bang for the buck, where's the needs lie, and it's going to be all over the place. We all understand that. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
That's an excellent idea, Marty. I think that's a good idea.
That's it. All right. We will move to item 4.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This item before you now, is essentially a policy that I would like to maybe bring back to the City Council at a later date. I just want to make sure that I'm sort of going down the same path as your desires. In 2009, the City of Hollister adopted a park acquisition and park construction impact fee on all new developments, and it was based on the City of Hollister's Parks Master Plan at the time. And the Parks Master Plan at that time, or the current one, encourages parks that are greater than 5 acres in size, and it really was based, more or less on the maintenance of the parks. Because what you'll find out is efficiency is that by the time we get our crews to a park, and it doesn't take a whole lot longer to take care of a 5-acre park as it does a 1-acre park. And it also provides more room for activities, not necessarily just your tot lot. I understand now over the last couple of years with the Planning Commission and the City Council, that sort of philosophy has changed into going to these smaller, what we call pocket parks, kind of the Las Brisas or tot lots or things of that nature, which is, again, it's absolutely okay. There's no right or wrong. It's the policy of the City Council and the Planning Commission. One of the things that I run into on a pretty regular basis is having the conversations with developers that say, well, if you make me build a park, do I get credit for my acquisition and construction fees? Historically, the answer to that was generally no. We took the stance of, or staff took the stance of, if the park was not part of the Parks Master Plan and the developer was building a park, generally it was for the marketing of his development to make sure that he had a nice little park maybe in the center of 100 homes, and it was kind of the marketing thing that says, hey, look, you have a little tot lot, you have a little park. They sold their last house, they leave again, and it goes back onto the onus of the City of Hollister to maintain in perpetuity. We've done some things now. We've set up Community Facilities District 4, which will help us maintain some of these smaller parks. But really for where my position is right now, and what do I tell these potential developers, if the Planning Commission and the City Council do desire these smaller parks, are you willing to give them a credit on their impact fees for the acquisition or the land donation to the city, and also the construction of the actual improvements? Again, we do need to sort of update our Parks Master Plan. I'll be coming to you hopefully soon with a request to begin that process. But that's a lengthy process. Generally, Parks Master Plans take a year or two, and we have some development that is coming down the pike much quicker than that. So I just want to make sure that I'm doing what the council wants to do. I want to make sure that I'm doing what the commission wants to do, but I'm not actually, doing something technically illegal. So I want to make sure that I am negotiating in good faith with developers, letting them know that if they are building these facilities, that they will be receiving some credit based on actual, market rate and land values and the actual construction cost. We, the city, would prefer, in almost all cases, for the developer to do the improvements and then dedicate. That way we eliminate the prevailing wage aspect. If you'll recall, the Southeast Area Park, the land was donated. That's the one off of Enterprise, and if some of you recall how long it took the City of Hollister to actually make those improvements, it took a long, long time. So from here on out, what we're trying to do is have the developers put in those improvements so that when they leave or when they dedicate the park, it's a finished, completed, improved facility. ready for our maintenance. So if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them, and then we can talk about how to move forward from here. Also, obviously, any open space requirements that are as part of a homeowners association or a planned unit development or a CP type project, that is completely outside of any sort of credit and or I believe that it should be only because it's not a public park. Generally speaking, it would be just for the owners of the facility that are part of that particular project. That would be like the swimming pool area and whatnot, and Cubicle's parcel or in his apartments. So we'll keep the private development stuff or the homeowners association things completely separate. This is really just sort of areas that the public can get to. Just so you know, we have a new park going in over at the Villages at Santa Ana. It's the project that you'll see under construction right now. There's a small tot lot proposed on the Ladd Ranch project, which is just south of the Rakovich 22 property, which is under construction right now. And then over on Apricot, there is a small linear park that's part of the kind of the overall master planned area for sort of the trailhead for the River Parkway project, and that there's open space going in over there. A lot of these facilities too are also kind of incorporated. That one is specifically incorporates sort of the stormwater detention basin as part of it, so it's kind of serving as a dual function, but it is open space. I don't think we've decided not to fence that particular one, so it will be green and there'll be some open space. So those are the three that I know off the top of my head that are starting. Oh, and then the second half of Southeast Area Park, which is about another 2.5 or 3 acres.
Okay. Councilmember Clower?
I have a lot of questions and comments on this. So my first kind of item is that goal CSF 4.4 provide an average of 4 acres for every 1,000 residents. And then I think it says that we provide 4.34 acres for every 1,000 residents. But when you really look at what's usable, it's not anywhere near that, and it might not even be half of that. When you think about if me or Councilmember Gomez or anybody here goes out to use a park, if the schools are in session, we really only have maybe half of those available. When you look at the list of parks on Appendix A, Sierra Vista Park 3.5, Calavera 7, Margaret Mays 14.8, Rancho 13. So those aren't available during the wintertime. Those aren't available really at all because the sun goes down at 5, and I think you can get on them at 4. So maybe you have an hour and a half if you're pushing it. So I don't know if maybe that's just part of the way that you can calculate it. You can count those, but it seems like there should be a proration for the number of hours that you can actually use the parks. Also on our Appendix A, it says Riverside Park 52.84. I'm guessing that's the spray fields.
That is.
And maybe we changed the term for that at some point, but I think this was 2009, and I haven't been able to call it a park since I've been on. So
please don't call it a park.
I really don't think that counts as 52.8 acres, and when you take that out, you're losing like 1.2 acres per 1,000 people. So that's kind of a joke to me that's on there right now. Frank Clower Park, 5 acres. No, not really. It's more like 1.5 acres because the majority of it is fenced in, and I understand that in development you want to maximize the use of the land, but what we get stuck with is we get stuck with parks that are actually drainage systems. We get stuck with parks that are on fault lines, which is probably a lot better than a fault that's in a drainage system that you can't actually use. So 5 is maybe more like 1.5 there. And I would say probably 1 of those acres is actually just grass along the street. So there's not a whole lot of usable space in that. District 3, I get calls every once in a while from people in District 3 saying, hey, when are we getting a park? Because if you look at city parks in District 3, there are no city parks in District 3. You have Memorial Park, which is a county park. You have Rancho, which you can't use most of the time. So if you're somebody who's living along Eastview or Nora Drive, you have to travel maybe a mile to get to a park. And I don't think that a mile is what we set our goals at. Is it a quarter of a mile? There's some kind of calculation about you should have a park this far away from anybody at any time. And I know that we're probably leaning on the fact that the river parkway will eventually be something, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. I'm now officially raising a little girl on the south side of town, and there's no parks anywhere nearby, and there's lots of kids in our neighborhood. And you can't really go to Ladd Lane because Ladd Lane's not on the list of parks that aren't open most of the time on here. So I have an issue with that. I think our numbers are misleading, very misleading. It says that we're going to need 72.56 additional acres to serve the population at the build-out of the city, which would be about 55,000. When you take away all those things, we don't have even 72 acres of usable parks for the 37,000 people we have. So it's a little disheartening when you actually look at it and you realize, like, hey, this is not great. And then you turn the page and you look at Appendix B, and it says sites to be acquired. And it's just, I kind of know the answer to this, but which ones are we working on acquiring right now? Because I don't know of a whole lot of Ladd Lanes or Meridian's a 23.5 acre site. We're probably not working on that. Ladd Lane is 10 acres, which would be half of the entire subdivision that I'm living in, which I just don't see us picking up 10 acres for a park or being able to build it anytime soon.
I believe that one was the part of the property that was going to be the YMCA at that time, which was south of the school.
So this one's kind of out?
Yeah. I mean, I think that parcel is part of the property that's between Ladd Lane School and Union Road that was originally, probably in 2009, was part of the YMCA's project.
Are there any sites on Appendix B that we're actually working on acquiring 6 years later after we made the list?
I would say no.
Okay.
And that's only, and part of the reason is because we didn't have a lot of building until now that was actually paying into, I mean, we're just now starting to collect. That's the other part of this situation, is that we're just now starting to collect fees on the houses that are part of the mitigation fee program.
Have we identified parcels or sites for any of these?
No.
Okay. So what is the time frame for our 2009 plan? Is it 20 years? Is it 25 years? Is it 30 years?
Well, I think that's part of what I think that I'm hoping to do by having the council adopt a new master plan, because what will come after the master plan is a new parkland mitigation fee that will incorporate exactly what you're saying. If the master plan that we develop removes a lot of the joint use facility agreements that we have, and has them separate and is really just talking about parkland, then we can adopt a fee that addresses just new parkland. And that's probably where we need to be. I will readily admit and sit here and say I think that a lot of this is absolutely flawed. And like you say, the 52 acres of the spray field, right now it shouldn't be included because it's not a park. It shouldn't be categorized as a park, nor will it. I mean, it will be. Hopefully within a year or two we could probably get there. But there's a lot of other parcels that we do need to be looking at for acquisition. But again, when you're talking about $2,500 of acquisition money per unit, it takes a long time to get to $800,000 or $1 million. We're not going to be able to do a lot of them. So that's why I think that developing a new park master plan, determining the price, adjusting the mitigation fee to sort of correspond with the acquisition cost, and or making developers donate more of their property as part of the process, those are all things that we should be doing.
Because when you kind of look at the big picture, you zoom out a little bit. One of the things that I've been a proponent of for the entire time I've been on the council is that we move toward density. So we're going toward smaller lots. We're moving houses closer to the street, so there's no front yards anymore. The smaller lot, you're losing your backyard, which in reality, it's a good thing if you have parks. If you don't have parks and you just have a lot of people and nowhere for them to go, maybe they're in the street. So we have to find some kind of happy medium where we don't just say, and one of the reasons why I ran for the council, I don't tell a whole lot of people this, is because I sat in the meeting maybe 15 months ago, 16 months ago, where you took the park out of the neighborhood that I'm living in now. And I knew, I said, that's going to be a nice little neighborhood to live in, with or without a park. But you took it out, and it didn't make any sense because you didn't get anything back for it. The developer got 2 more lots, and the city got no park. So there's a lot of issues that go with this. And I don't know, maybe I've just been focused on other stuff, but I'm glad you brought it up because now it's a lot more on my radar. There's a lot here, and I don't think that's necessarily what we're talking about tonight, but it's part of a bigger picture.
Oh, it is. And I believe that it is kind of this is kind of why I did want to bring it to your attention, is because it absolutely, I think it sheds some light on why this is important. I agree with you that we haven't identified future park sites. We get mad at the school district for not addressing future school sites. We're doing the same thing. We're not pointing out on a general plan where our next big park is. I mean, maybe we did kind of, but that was kind of as a result of something much greater, the sewer treatment plant. So we need to start focusing on where our next parks are going to be. And they can't be they're not, a healthy community won't just survive on pocket parks either. We need parks where you can actually play baseball, soccer, football, not just passive and small child areas.
And not retention ponds.
Unless it's a big retention pond.
Councilmember Gomez?
Yeah, I don't know if we have this figure, Billy, but do you know what our costs, our O&M costs are or I guess just M costs, maintenance costs on parks are per acre?
Per acre? Oh, no, I don't. But we could probably figure that out for you relatively easy.
Yeah, I think that would be interesting. Yeah, I mean, if we could just take all the acres that we have, multiply it by whatever we're paying, and we could probably get that figured out.
I can tell you our joint use agreements are costing us a fortune.
They are?
They are.
So the ones that we can't use?
For a majority.
One of the items that was going to be on tonight was those, and we're going to put those on the next study session because that's something that absolutely needs to be discussed.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I mean, I think they need to be discussed. I think the layout of them, I will say, though, that they're good to have. We need to have joint use agreements with these facilities. Now, obviously, we need to make sure that we're getting the best bang for our buck, and so is the school district as well. But I'd be interested in finding out the maintenance per acre. If you could get that information to me, I think that would be great. Councilmember McClower mentioned the development that he lives in currently and the removal of that park. If I remember, at least for years before that, and unfortunately I came on board in late 2008 and for the first 4 years I had the pleasure of firing people and cutting back expenses. That's all we did for 4 years straight. So I never had the pleasure of talking about expanding parks and park acquisition. This is all fairly new to, I think, a lot of us, because when Ray and I came on board, it was some pretty dire times. So I'm happy to talk about park acquisition. But I think in to take it all into context, we really need to and put it in perspective. We really need to look at maintenance costs as well, because it's not about obviously building new parks necessarily. I think it's important. I have children that use parks, and I have a park right around the corner from my house. I think it's important to have them available. But the reason we were talking about axing these pocket parks was because it wasn't easy to put our staff at 8 different parks in one day, loading, unloading, loading, unloading, loading, unloading, all day long for these little tiny half-acre parks. So I think I'm interested in that discussion. I'm also interested, now that I just said that, I'm actually interested in discussing the difference between, I'm sure the maintenance costs would be a lot different for a small park compared to a larger park. Larger park would have lower fees, lower maintenance costs. So I'd be interested in looking at that in its entirety as we continue this discussion.
Thank you. A lot of good points brought up here. The conversation about the park Councilmember Clower brought up does not exist, was that point where we said that's enough. No more neighborhoods being built without parks. And that was the last one they got through. And I think that helped us all understand that we can find a way to do this. The CFDs came about now to cover the cost of maintaining those parks. I don't think we want to go back to a point of saying to the developer, yeah, you build the park and you don't have to pay any other fees. Look, if you want to come to our community to build homes, you're going to build a park in your community and you're going to put more dollars into some future parks that we want to build, regional parks. And I think that's where we, again, need to step back, work with the county, build these regional parks. We have the opportunity now with the park along the river, the non-park, that we should be focusing on right now with the county. They want to build a regional park. We want to build a regional park. We can get that park built quickly. I think all new developments, especially the larger ones of 100 homes or larger, should be building parks the size of at least a Gary Park. That should be a minimum size. If it's a smaller development, maybe they can get away with a small pocket park. But with the CFDs in place, we can cover the cost of maintaining, which is important to understand. And it's important for us to understand how to be more efficient on how we are maintaining our parks. And I think we've become much better at doing that. The partnerships are the key to success. And I think the future is for these developers to also pay again into our regional park system. So we have the larger parks scattered around the city or the county, and then the really large regional parks, again, at the river or as the county wanted to do next to the high school. So there's plans out there that we need to finish and put a timeline on to get them done. I think the Clower Park is a great example. As Councilmember Clower pointed out, we have 5 acres, but we really only have maybe an acre and a half. We talked about that dog park in the center. We're working on the plans on that. We need to finish it so the public can use that additional 3 acres, I believe, probably, and there are a couple acres in there. So we have facilities now that we need to, again, finish what we started. So we need to do the repairs already on McCarthy Park. We need to do the upgrades at Calaveras Park. We're already doing it up at Park Hill. We need to finish Clower Park, on and on. We wrap these up, get focused on the larger ones, but I don't think we step back and tell the developers, okay, you pay for this part and you're done. No, we let them know if they want to build that neighborhood, they're going to build the park there. And depending on how many homes are in there, it's going to be a tot lot or it's going to be the size of a Gary Park, and they're going to put more money in for a larger park. So that's part of the cost of coming into our community. We want a good community. We don't want to make the mistakes of the past. We want to enjoy where we live. And as Councilmember Clower pointed out, it's not fair for our kids who have to go across town to find a park. Councilmember Friend.
Well, I agree with everything that's been said. I just want to make some points that, like Victor said, that before we got here, the emphasis was on not telling the developers anything, but yes, build your homes and thank you very much. In my area, we have 3 parks that have never been finished, never even, the land's there. We've never done anything with them. And I think it's time we do just that and say, we're at a point now where if you want to build in our neighborhood, in our community, you're going to add parks to it. The other problem is when these parks are built, these little regional parks, is if we go that way, there has to be access. And Mickey brought it up at one of the development meetings where there was a development going on over on Maple, and it may have a small park in the middle of it. Well, it should be accessible from the houses further down on Maple. It shouldn't just be accessible to those 150 homes unless they're exclusively going to pay the fees to maintain it, and I doubt that. So that has to be part of the plan, that if you're not going to build the park in your neighborhood, you're going to make it accessible wherever the next park is or wherever the existing park is. So we have to look at that to where people can walk. Like Carson is saying, there's going to be a park in the area where he's living now, but is it going to be accessible from his house? I doubt it, unless we build a walkway or something that will allow that, not just pushing the carts down the street. So I think that's going to be, I think it's time we look at that, and I think it's a good idea that you brought it up, that we need to overhaul the whole thing if that's what we're going to do. And like the mayor says, we have to consider, I hate asking people to put in money for the River Park when I seriously doubt if it's ever going to be built, but you never know. They may come up and build it, and then we're stuck without anything. So we're going to have some funds in there for that.
Councilmember Leonard?
Yes. Well, we have the parks, you know, that are situated in our districts. I know as a reminder, I've often spoken with our city manager regarding the upkeep and maintenance of those parks. Just because they're there doesn't mean that they're going to be forgotten parks. I mean, one park, the Tony Aguirre Park, is the one that I've been keeping an eye on, and Calaveras. And I mean, there was a drinking fountain there that wasn't working for over a year. And yet, every time I went there, children were playing. And where do you go for a drink of water? So I think it's something important. I see where the parks in the school districts, you know, we need to look at the upkeep of those parks. And I know that while we are planning to meet with the school districts to discuss the contracts, I really believe that these parks, we really need to bring that into discussion. So I'm hoping that that'll be scheduled as well. Okay, thank you.
Speaking of parks, how is Park Hill doing? Excuse me.
You haven't been up there?
I want to put Mike on the spot too.
Oh, you got to go. You got to visit.
I did do a visit. I have been up there.
We finished about 75% of the concrete work just today. We're going to put in the accessible trail that goes around. Right now it's only a C because we got to get big trucks in there to dump the stuff that we need to dump still, but we will close it off so it'll be a complete circle around. We're going to be doing that tomorrow. I invite you up to come look. We're using a new product that we're actually I'm excited about it. Those guys aren't. Because it's a little bit of work. But this product actually we've heard some very good things about. And if it works, we're going to start using it in a lot of places in town because it doesn't allow weeds or anything else to grow.
How's the overhaul of the restroom situation?
We haven't even begun. We've been working on the playground nonstop. We had to put in new disabled spots. All that concrete work's done. Took a long time.
Okay. I'll be up there then.
Thank you. Councilmember Clower, have another comment?
I think one of the things that we really need to look at is before these things are built, the design process for the park, and parks and sound walls and everything, that would be a little bit more specific, because I understand. I remember the vote. I'm not trying to criticize anybody for the vote for taking the park out of our neighborhood. I know that's what it came across as. And I understood the thought process, but at the time, it looked like the city kind of gave the developers $400,000 in profits and received nothing. When I really think, if you can build a backyard where you only need to spend 15 minutes a week on your backyard and you can use it all the time, which you can do that, I think you can build a park like that and not have to have all the maintenance. Maybe there's no grass. Maybe if it is a tot lot, you have a tot lot, you have your rubber mat, you have concrete, you have a couple benches, and that's it. You never have to come by it maybe once a week just to kind of check on it and see if there's any graffiti or anything. That's something I think we can do. One of the problems I see, I keep talking about my neighborhood, we allow the developers to put in landscaping that is great while they're watering it, but if I think state law says that the city can't water sound walls or public spaces once they own it. So when handed over to the city, all of the plants that were put in to look pretty are all going to die, and we have a nice looking retention pond with probably 2,500 bushes in it and plants. They're all going to die because there's not going to be any water going to them. So we need to look a little further out and maybe dictate a little bit more what we're going to receive when we get these facilities back from the developers, because it's going to look awesome for another year until they're done, and then they hand it to us, and then I don't want to sound bad, but we're going to let it go, and that's a guarantee. And I'm saying we don't have enough parks, but I'm also saying that we don't really have the parks that we do have aren't in great condition either, and we're working on that. But even the ones that we've gone back over and fixed, they still are not in great condition a year later. So we need to look out a little further and design these parks for 25 years, not just for it looks pretty great. Let's use it now.
Councilmember Gomez.
Yeah, just really quick. I just want to piggyback on Councilmember Clower's comment on, and I'm not sure if this is the direction that he was going, but I definitely think that as we move forward with the concept of these parks and whatever acquisition we're gonna move forward with, we definitely need to have better community outreach when it comes to the creation of these parks anywhere in our community. For the past couple of years, I advocated, and I know Billy probably got tired, and Mike probably got tired of talking about the whale park and the improvements it needed over the past couple of years. Staff came through. The council allocated some funds for the improvements of the whale park. I spent quite a bit of time there. Obviously, it's right around the corner from my house. And when I visited during the summer, there was like 50 canopies up. It was like the beach. And so I'm all for anybody else in any other council district. If you want a water feature, go ahead and take one, please, because there was absolutely no parking. Parking was overflowing into the neighborhood, and obviously folks were concerned about that. But I'm happy. I'm happy with the use of it. I know Ignacio saw it as well. But if anybody else wants a whale, don't take mine, but you could have your own too to kind of spread the love a little bit.
But to piggyback on that, what we do need to do is have another meeting to discuss our parks again, because part of the idea was to have a water feature on the west side of town, and we need to really come back, complete what we talked about a year and a half ago, get all the current parks up to date so that our public can use them. Now, the maintenance issue that's just an organizational issue. That's all it is, and I've expressed my opinion on that many of times here, and I think we need to look at that and make sure we understand how to maintain these parks correctly. Done right, it would take no more than 2 people staying on the park issue all the time, so we have these beautiful parks, because we do not want them to fall back into disrepair. We want to improve our parks and keep them that way. And I think if we can come back, have a meeting, and talk about how we're going to finish off our parks, that being Clower Park with the dog park, Calaveras, McCarthy, all the different ones that we need to complete the parks, set a goal so we get them done. If that means we have to hire subcontractors to finish them off and get them done, so be it. But we cannot wait for 6 months to finish a park. And I know everybody's busy. I'm not placing blame on anybody. I'm just saying let's set a timeline, a goal, complete it, so we can move on to the regional park, working in a partnership with the county. And I'm sure the county is more than willing to have that partnership, and I'm sure the schools are too. So we're close, and we've done a good job so far, but we need to complete that job. So if we can schedule a separate meeting to talk about completing the parks, adding the water feature to the west side, or any other repairs that need to be done, let's start planning now so we can make sure it's done in by summer of next year.
Is McCarthy Park considered a West Side Park, or is that a Central Park?
That's a Central Park, and Councilmember Friend actually has some good ideas he picked up at this show, and I'm sure he's going to be bringing them forward pretty.
Because we have a kind of a plan. We sort of designed a water feature, the skateboard facility, and a handball and basketball at McCarthy. So if we want to do one on the west end too, we can go down there as well.
Let's see what we can do there. Do we
How
have
about the skateboard park at Dunn?
Yeah, that's actually that's designed now. Yeah.
Okay. Let's move forward with any speaker cards.
Yes, sir. We have two. The first speaker is Keith Snow, who has inquired on the card if the city plans to raise park impact fees for lights. He opposes fees and lighting.
And that thing, that's a question about water. When you mention water, I got rid of my uncles, Mike, the management there. As once you recycle water, the water, the plants that are not dead, and they clean everything right. And that's the thing too. We're ready for it right now, raw before. I can be successful and not be successful when you add the comprehend things and civic concepts and things that we did in our city for training. Because when my city manager right there, Bill, you were there before for years, and when Rob was here, ex-secondman, as gophers, we're supposed to do on parts to be self-sufficient. And spraying the weeds, doing gopher holes, and Mike does management there too. How can we so how we do this? We have to be organized and coordinate our city. Parts, you guys want growth, because can growth. Impact fees or lighting thing before, let's put that in there, right? But I can do that. We do need water park. But for a fact is, first got basis, and got foundation, and got organization, and you got to prioritize. We're not doing that thing here. I'll see here. I said, you guys talk. You talk about doing this. I give you guys things to water, want to use water that's not for plants. Let's use our brains. We're not doing that thing here. Let's do more communication. You guys can do workshops, get feedback. I do all the time. Get a lot of feedback. I know it's going to seem way more now that the water before, way more now for the people, for the community, for the people, talk to the people. But I think you can do that. But you guys talk about doing training and reduce spending. That would reduce spending. If we do spray and now get circles, more job creation, make it broaden our city. Harder workers do work. Because there are a lot of workers here see to do no work. So a lot of things here. Mike's over there doing the parts. He supports Cofor's officer. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And Marty Richmond.
I shouldn't ask for an extra 12 minutes. Marty Richmond from Hollister. I do have. First of all, I want to thank Councilmember Clower for actually reading the list of parks and its age. I don't know if we have a more up-to-date list, but one of the first things we should do is get a database together that not only shows the parks and how many acres it is, but how many usable acres they are, not just acres, because I don't consider a runoff or a whale or an area where it collects drainage as a usable area. Okay, it may be open space, but it's not a park. And we ought to get that database up to date and have all kinds of information about the parks in that database. And we ought to use that, and it would also help us plan our maintenance runs so that they're more efficient. That's the first thing. The second thing is, and I've mentioned this in the context with bike lanes, and they go together, unless you codify what you want, it's not going to get done. We can have 100 meetings here and say, well, this is what we really like, and this is what we ought to say, and whatever. If you don't codify it somewhere so that the planning commission looks at at these developments and says, wait a minute, our code is you got to have 2 entrances. And we've already said that. We want bike lanes. So you got the same issue, because what's going to happen is the developer is going to say, oh, well, we want credit because we made an extra wide street for bike lanes. Listen, if they don't do it, we're going to have to come back 10 years, 15 years later and do it. And once the houses are in place, it becomes impossible in many cases. So I've mentioned several of these items concerning that. We all know about turnaround space for the fire engines and so on and so forth, fire equipment and emergency access. We've talked about having two egress or entrances and egress so that everything doesn't come out on one street, because when it does, you can't have any bicycles because you got to go around the whole neighborhood before you can get out, which doesn't make any sense because they put a wall around the neighborhood, whereas you should have the streets connected and you should have openings so people can go through. You should put the parks on a linear basis. And we've talked about all this, but you know, there's an old saying in New York City, talk's cheap. It's easy to do. You come down here, we do a lot of talking. I do a lot of talking. But to get it done, we got to get it in writing, and we got to get it in a program. So you got to make those decisions and say, look, this is what we're going to do. You're not going to get credit, or you're going to get credit for 20% because it helps you sell your homes, but 80% of it you got to pay for. We'll give you 20% because it helps the city too. Whatever you're going to do, whatever the rule is, you got to get it somewhere into the regulations, ordinances, or whatever. So or zoning, whatever. So you have it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
There are no more speakers, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. So, Bill, you got it. I think again it would be helpful to have that future meeting to
We can do that.
lock down the current park issue and achievable plans for regional park. So
Yeah, I think we have a pretty active Park and Recreation Commission now that I think that we can utilize their services. Like I said, we'll have probably several more discussions because I think it's imperative that we at least begin the new park master plan with the new philosophy on where this city wants to go with their parks. So,
I think we should invite them in planning.
well,
we have a separate meeting with
yeah,
them.
we're going to try to schedule that as well.
So, all right. Any other comments from the council? All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. We have a motion for adjournment. Motion is second. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone, for coming out.